Well, welcome everybody. Today we're having our third installment in our Enhancing the Patient Experience series, and today's session is titled Selling Our Ideas, Treatment Plans, and Services. And I think it's a very relevant topic in healthcare, and it has been now for a couple of years. And one of the big reasons is because we know that as the patient is having to pay more out of their own pocket for their care, we know that that can have a negative effect on the utilization of healthcare. And I put this article on the screen here that just shows, kind of tells us that. And so I think it will be very important to listen to what Bob has to say today to help us as we're talking to our patients and trying to, show them and sell them on the value of the care that we're providing and how we can best do that. So with that, Bob, take it away.
Thank you, Jeff. And good afternoon, everybody. Truly a privilege sharing my heart and mind with you today on a subject that I have just a great love about, and that's winning people to our way of thinking. And I was reflecting on our journey that we started on in January. We talked about attitude and the role that attitude plays in our daily lives, our attitudes towards ourselves and our attitudes towards others. And then we worked on the session on remembering names and the importance of recalling a person's name and cementing it into our mind's eye through some mind's eye pictures, so to speak. And we had some great success with that. And then, of course, our session on building healthy relationships. All of this designed to help us build a foundation with our patients so that we can ease them and bring them on the journey of healthiness and in our working with them as human beings. As I was preparing for our meeting today, I also have to make sure that I have your permission as we get going. I really, truly want to have you engaged in our conversation, having this be more of a conversation today than me just speeching at you. I really would desire that. And so with that in mind, as we reflect back just a little bit before we go forward, our session on remembering, recalling names, we talked about, getting that impression in our mind's eye of the person and utilizing the name in the conversation. Anybody on the call today have any success reports to share with us on recalling a patient's name or using a patient's name or bumping into them at the grocery store and being able to call them by name because you made that an extra effort here today? Anybody at all on the conference today that has any successes to report in recalling and remembering names? I'm just curious. Okay.
Hold on, Bob. Dr. Kyle Pankinen, we had talked a little bit about that. Maybe just tell us how you've incorporated that using the patient's name more in your practice.
I used to walk into the treatment room a lot, and I would say good morning or good afternoon or how are you today, but I would not always say their name. And since we've done this series here and I've been working on that, I make a special emphasis and a point to make sure I say good morning Bob or good morning Jan or whoever, so that I'm saying their name more often, so it's cementing it in my head. And I always had trouble. I would get their name sometimes in the clinic right, but I would see the person in public and then I couldn't recall their name. And so I've noticed that a few occasions now since saying the patient's name more in the clinic, that when I see them in public, it's like, oh yes, that is Bob or that is Jan or whoever. So yes, I have seen some improvement in my own areas there of my deficiencies.
Well, thank you for sharing that here today. Boy, that just really primes the pump for us. Thank you so much. And it's just that simple act, that attitude of, and having the I want to recall and remember names and then just utilize them in a healthy way in our conversations into the future. What a great success story. Thank you, Doctor, for sharing. And as I was preparing for the meeting today, I wanted to help us understand. I don't want us to think that we're like going to be a used car salesman here or anything like that. But as human beings, when we purchase something, any kind of a product, a service, a TV, a washing machine, we go through a process of what's been defined as the 5 great rules process. And it's something gets our attention. Whether it be an advertisement on the TV or on the internet, somehow something gets our attention. And then we get interested in that product or service somehow. Our curiosity is piqued. And then we get a little information and we get convinced that this is something we want and need. And then something triggers deep inside of us this stage of desire, almost overwhelming desire. We want it now, and then we purchase whatever that product or service is. And that process of getting their attention, getting them interested, convincing them, building the desire, and closing the sale is a process that we walk everybody through in the clinics, in our businesses. That's the buying, selling process. Something gets their attention, something gets them interested, something convinces them, something they get this desire, and then something or somebody closes the sale. We call that attention, interest, conviction, desire, and close. So everything we've done thus far is to gain or get their attention. As we move into the interest step, we start asking more questions. And so, of course, we want to be reminded the purpose of asking questions is to define the patient's, what I call their primary interest or what they want. And then their dominant buying motive is really what we want to find out is why they want that. So the what and the why. They might come in, they have a pain in their back. Well, that's what they want, is the pain to go away. But, why do they want the pain to go away? Well, they want to feel better, of course. But why do they really want to feel better? Well, so they can go on that ski trip or on that canoe ride or whatever it is down the road they got planned in their life. And so they have these motivations, these dominant buying motivations. We find that out really by asking questions and really tuning in and listening. So I like to make sure I gain people's permission at the onset. It builds trust. And so as I'm building a relationship with them and I'm asking a few questions, and I know that some of my questions might get a little bit more sensitive in nature, I'm going to make sure I have asked permission to ask them a few questions. And now, what kinds of questions would I ask once I have their permission? Well, I generally start off on what I refer to as person-centered questions. Person-centered questions. Get to know them as a human being. Maybe some of their likes or dislikes, and you can see that on the next screen here, Jeff. It could be, what do you do in your free time? What do you have for your hobbies? Have you traveled anywhere recently? Or what do you do just for fun? And so I'd ask some person-centered questions just to help me build that trust, build that rapport with the person I'm visiting with. And once I've asked a person-centered question, I ramp it up a little bit, and then I take it to the next stage. And of course, that's the problem-centered questions. How is this pain impacting you? And if we don't solve this challenge, what is your plan? Do you have any other strategies? So, and doctors, you might help us out here. Maybe what are some good problem-centered questions that you could ask of that patient to really make them be clear in their wants and needs? Any other problem-centered questions that would fit right here that are good questions? Anybody? Okay, here we go. The person-centered questions are just kind of the get to know them kind of questions, but the problem is more focused on what their exact wants and needs are.
I found the question that connects most with my patients is, yeah, you got to ask them about their pain and what they're coming in for, but you got to dig down deeper and get to the root of how their pain is affecting their life. In other words, are they afraid of losing their job? Are they afraid, or is it Is it affecting their relationship with their wife or their children, or is it affecting their love life, or any of those things? You have to dig down deeper to find out. Usually they're not coming in for the pain, but they're coming in for something in their life that the pain is affecting, and they want that back.
You're spot on. You're exactly where we're moving, and that's what I call the payout questions, or the ultimate benefit type questions. Now, we don't want to jump to these right away. We want to kind of sprinkle them in at the right time and the right place. So we'd ask a person-centered question, maybe a problem-centered question, and then those ultimate benefit questions. Those are the ones that are going to give us that dominant buying motive that'll take them through the long haul with you on their treatment plan. And so, what do they see themselves doing differently? How is this going to affect you? And, or like you said, Doc, affect the family? These are great questions. And so I'd ask a person-centered, maybe a problem-centered, ask an ultimate benefit question. Then I'd go back and ask another, maybe a person-centered question, kind of bounce around those questions a little bit more until I really know, I'm really convinced I know what their primary interest is and their dominant buying motive. Now, I'm talking about the long-term buying motive, the real motivation for the long haul in their restoration of health. And so that's exactly what we'd be looking for. Now, once I've asked these questions, I've kind of earned the privilege, so to speak, to go to the next step. And we'll see that here on the screen, Jeff. And that would be the point that, well, first of all, we should mention that you'll never get in trouble for asking questions. You'll only get in trouble for making statements. And so I just had to throw that out there today. But once we've gathered their primary interest and dominant buying motive, we've earned the privilege then to start the conviction process, because they're wanting to be convinced. They're wanting to be, they want to buy into our ideas because they want the relief, et cetera, et cetera. So the tools that I use is a variety of these steps, what I call the defeats acrostic. And when I mean defeat, it overcomes the hesitations they may have of buying into my ideas in the future. And so I might utilize some type of a demonstration, because everybody's kind of show me. They want to see it work. So I might demonstrate how I would do this activity or do this exercise. And then one thing about human beings is everybody loves a story. So maybe you could tell a story about how Mary followed your advice on some implementation of some program. You might say, that she read in my newsletter about the rainbow diet. I caught this the other day in Dr. Wayne's newsletter, the rainbow diet, and purples and blues are important in the rainbow diet and for good health. And you tell the story about how Bob read about this in my newsletter, and now he's on the rainbow diet, and just great stories. People love to hear stories how others are having successes. Now, obviously, I know we have some HIPAA rules and things like that we have to take into consideration, but we can still tell first name stories. I always like to have a big, hard, cold fact, maybe a heavy duty, a big fact that I like to share with people. For example, I might say, I have a total satisfaction assurance policy. That's a fact. That means I'm going to work until I'm totally satisfied that you're satisfied. And so I share a heavy fact like that. I might have an exhibit, show up some kind of a document. Here's my plan for you here today. So an exhibit, whether it's, a document, a flyer, a chart of some kind, this would be an exhibit. It's the show and tell. You let them touch it, they feel it, they can see it. This is a show and tell kind of a tool. Now, you're not going to use it, every one of these all at the same time with a patient, but maybe on their first session with you, you do a demonstration and some examples. The next session, you do some facts and exhibits. The next session, you're building some analogies and testimonials, because we're always working and winning people to our way of thinking. And these are great strategies and tools to overcome those apprehensions and defeat the fears they have with moving ahead with your strategies. And of course, statistics are a good one too. So just as we quickly look over these, because I know you do them all, demonstrations, examples, facts, exhibits, analogies. I love to use analogies as I work. I love to make analogies of things and to make my point. For example, if I'm having dinner with somebody at a meal at a restaurant and I'm winning them to my way of thinking on a strategy, I might say, you know, that salt and pepper shaker is just like my leadership training seminars. And they go, what's that salt and pepper shaker have to do with your leadership seminars? And I say, well, you know, just like that salt and pepper that seasons up our meat and our food for us, one of the things people have told me as a result of participating in our leadership seminars is they have a greater richness, more seasoning in their leadership style, and they're having greater success as a result of that. And I utilize that analogy as a simple analogies to win them to my way of thinking in my conviction process. Anybody utilizing any of these tools of demonstrations, examples, facts, exhibits, analogies, testimonials, or statistics, just as an opportunity to share and contribute to the meeting today that you're really having some success with as we kind of identify these steps? Anybody today on the call?
You know, Bob, what we're talking about is the report of findings. So, Jeff Gullickson, why don't you share with us, you know, what you use that helps you be more successful with your report of findings with the patient?
Hopefully this is working. One of the things I do with questions is I will talk to the patients about their hobbies, find out what they're doing, and then I relate it to the symptoms that are affecting them, or perhaps how exercises or rehab are going to help them. And then I'll tie that in with their report of findings. I'll point out that if they're a big-time skier, by working on this, we can get them back to that activity level, or a golfer, or whatever type of activity it is. I can take my report of findings and point out to how it is affecting them, what we can do about it, and how we can move forward.
Excellent. Excellent tie-in. Beautiful.
How about the Ortman Clinic? Doug, what are some things that help you and the doctors there be successful with the report of findings? Doug?
Oh, we're just getting the mic working here. Can you?
There we go.
Good deal.
Okay. I'm just going to ask the other guys in the group here. Anybody else have comments on the report of findings? I think what they said about having the contact with the patients, making that personal contact is always important. It helps us a little bit here where we have patients for a week, so we have contact with them for 5 days. And it's a good way to build a relationship with that. I like the analogies with what problems they're having and the connection with their life. I think that's important. It relates to them if you can do that. Statistics, I kind of like that. I think there's a lot of things that that you can say in terms of our practice and successes that we have, that you might call that a testimony also, or facts, or examples. I think those all are similar. Those are all good ways to connect.
All right, very good.
Excellent, thank you. I was sharing with Jeff here the other day that I've kind of been doing an informal survey of my friends and family who've ever been to a chiropractor ever before. And so I've talked to like my brother and my brother-in-law and some other friends and buddies, and just kind of, you know, gathered what their experiences were like before they went in, during their, in the office with the doc experience, and then after the fact, what were some of their thoughts and some of their discoveries? Because I really wanted to get into the head of some other folks just to kind of just see what that experience was like for them. And boy, very educational. And a lot of what I heard is, they were all excited for the first 3 or 4 visits, but as then all of a sudden they would get more frustrated because they'd start seeing the bills coming in and seeing that, they're paying a $50 copay, and holy crimey, they're going to have me coming in 10 more times. That's $500 I'm going to have to pay out. And how am I going to buy my big screen TV if I can't, And so after the 3rd or 4th visit, many of them told me that they would just stop going. And then they would never even hear from the doctor again or from the doctor's office. And so I even heard some of that. And so as I was processing that information, I was thinking, about how as human beings, initially, when we make a commitment to something, we're always excited. Now, we got to remember that excitement only lasts 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks, maybe 3 months. At somewhere in that between the 3rd and the 4th, we move into a second phase of attitude, and that's called frustration. And we go into shock, and all of a sudden we get a bill that comes in the mail, and all of a sudden I got to pay a $200 copay or something. I mean, that shock sets in, and then they go, gee, I'm feeling better. I don't need to go back. I even heard my brother-in-law say that, I started feeling better. I didn't see why I needed to go back again and again. And so what that was communicating to me when I was hearing this information was, as people go into frustration, they go into shock, they go into denial, they fear sets in, fear of the unknown, fear of what people are going to think of them. The fear factor triggers things, and people just make not the best decisions when they're frustrated. And so that's why we need to be even more convincing when we do our report of findings. Now, it isn't so much that we need to give them more information, it's we got to make sure we're giving them the right information. And so that's why the primary interest in the dominant buying motive is so important. If we're skipping that step, we could be giving them the wrong information they need to be as convinced as they need to be to follow through with the treatment plan. And so we're always going to be convincing. We're always going to be building the relationships with them, and then applying these little tools every opportunity we have. I'm talking planned engagement. For example, you might want to have your assistant focus on an analogy that day with the patient, and then you work on a demonstration that you're going to do. And so doing more planned presentations, being more planned and strategic in your efforts to win your patients to your way of thinking in that report of findings. So any other comments or questions just on the process of asking questions through the person-centered problem, payout, or ultimate benefit questions, and then the steps of being even more convincing? Because there's just one more little step I want to take you to here yet.
Say, Bob, this is Wayne.
Sure, Wayne.
And your point of saying, after that 3 to 4 visits, and I like your idea of the 3s, but patients, did they say anything about their patients' frustration in trying to communicate with the doctor, not knowing? Why did they not at least communicate the fact that they felt they were to the point that they were better, worried about financial, it's getting more expensive than I maybe planned? Patients don't communicate that very well to us.
No, they don't. And so knowing that, what we should do, knowing that between the 3rd and 4th visit, human nature is going to start setting in. We need to prepare for that proactively, because it's going to happen with every patient, every customer. Anytime any one of us make a commitment, that's going to be a natural reaction. So we got to be prepared for that proactively, and even say, now what's going to happen after your 3rd or 4th visit with me? This could happen. You could start getting, the thoughts or the feelings. So this is where you're going to have to really double down that much harder, because it's going to take this 12-session treatment plan, let's say, for us to really get the healing that you need to have. because so you're going to have to really get them buying in and then getting their agreement to that at that point, getting them, it's like, well, let's go to the next screen and you'll see this here on the next screen. When I'm aspiring to be convincing, I'm going to state a fact. I'm going to bridge that fact with a benefit. And a bridge, for example, is a phrase like which means to you, or so that, or ultimately. And I'll give you an example of a fact bridge benefit. Fact is, in our training sessions, we always give an assignment to go out and apply this strategy. And then what happens ultimately is when people go out and not only adopt it and adapt it, but apply it into their lives, they come back and they tell us they have greater successes. And you'd like to have greater successes in your leadership or your selling, wouldn't you, Bill? And so then I would then nail down that they're convinced that this too is a good idea for them. So I'm going to say the fact, bridge, benefit, and nail that down every once in a while to get them buying in, going, yes, yes, I need this. I want this. I will follow. I know on the fourth session or fourth time we get together, I'm going to be probably frustrated with coming in, but I'm going to recommit. I'm going to persevere with you on this, Doc. And so you got to get them buying in at that point using this fact bridge benefit process. Can someone maybe give me an example of a fact bridge, a fact about your services that you would share and then bridge that and then with the benefit they would get out of it? Can someone give me an example of a fact bridge benefit, like have me be the patient? Give me a fact. Some kind of a fact. Like, Bob, fact is you're gonna have to
work on exercises.
So just touching on that, Bob, if we set a fact of let's say you have some lower back pain, and
okay.
would a fact be, Bob, you've been suffering with this lower back pain now for 6 weeks now, and we want to try to do something about that. Would that be what you're talking about?
Yes. And then ultimately, Bob, what would it mean to you if we were to get this back pain solved for you? What would be the ultimate benefit if we were to solve that for you?
And then using that as a question, right?
Yes, and that's bringing that back, and that's why I call nailing it down. We're going to nail it down. We're not going to nail down every one of them, but about every third or fourth fact bridge benefit in the conviction process, we're going to nail that down. We're going to get their agreement that, yes, that is a benefit that I'd like to gain. I'd like to have greater flexibility. I'd like to be able to go out there and walk more. I'd like to, yes, I do want that. I do want that. I want to be able to go to my son's wedding and feel good and not be hurting. And it's getting them to agree with you on that.
So we'd go, okay, Bob, you've been having this back pain for 6 weeks now. It's been affecting your life. You're unable to do your walking. You're limited to walking only 1 block. You're not sleeping very well at night. Then, okay, so then do we then go, the benefit that we could provide you is to get you to walking. Our goal would be to get you walking a half a mile a day. And then instead of losing 3 hours of sleep at night, only losing 2 hours. Or would we leave that benefit open to them to finish that?
Well, I would at least take it through at least every third or fourth time in that conversation with them. That leave it sometimes to them, and then you countersink that nail a couple of times. There's no one's going to really buy into an idea unless there's a little pain involved in that. I'm talking mental pain. They got to feel some of the pain to make change or to make a recommitment to an idea or product or a service. They've got to feel some pain to make change, and I'm talking a mental pain here. And we're going to be able to do that by getting them an agreement during the conviction step. Even getting them just saying yes, yes. Well, let's see. we get their attention, we get them interested through effective questions. As we share the report of findings, we start the conviction process. We're starting to convince them, but we don't stop convincing them. It happens literally at every event we have with them. We can continue to be even more convincing. We can countersink the nail every time, and we should. In other words, we're always kind of selling, per se. I hate to use that word, but we're always kind of selling. We always want them to buy into our ideas. Thoughts, comments, or questions just on the process of getting their attention, getting them interested, convincing them, having them buy into our ideas, having that desire, and then ultimately closing the sale and gaining the commitment.
Not to steal the microphone, Bob, but the one thing key is the fact that with this process, what I also see is they just have trouble communicating what their goals are and what they're having trouble with. And this process would maybe open that up a little bit better to allow us to know what their goals are, and then us to be able to say, a better treatment plan to get there. And then in addition, most of us on this phone call are typically, let's treat you 3 or 4 times, see how you're feeling, and we'll evaluate from there. But I think this process would get us better in knowing where they want to get to. And then us being able to develop a treatment program that will help them achieve what they want from that benefit.
Exactly, Wayne. We're on the same page, and I really believe that's what we're after. And I'm thinking there was, like I said, that a text I sent to Jeff here in the last week was, if we're really working at enhancing the patient experience to really have that patient service, they've got to really buy into the treatment plan. And for them to, I'm talking the long-term element of the treatment plan. And so for them to really truly buy into it, we just got to make sure that we're covering all of our bases and that we've made sure that we've done our job in that process. If all of a sudden they're not as convinced as we thought they were, that means that we haven't done our job. It's not on them, it's on us. That means we haven't done our job. It was just like, for example, one of the notes, the bits of feedback I got back was, I've never had a doctor from chiropractic call me after they've taken care of me. I've never had that experience. I've had it from the dental office where the dentist would call me, but I've never had a chiropractic doctor call me after the fact. And so let's say I found that out from however, and so I would ask the question, communications is very important with us in your healing process and in your treatment plan that I'm going to share with you. And so I just want to find out for sure, can we have an ongoing dialogue? Do I have your permission to give you a call here in a couple of, sometime midweek to just follow up and see how you're doing? And, sure, you can call me. Absolutely. I love to hear from you. And we do emails and things like that. So we have, your permission to do, yes, absolutely. And so then I would use those opportunities to continue selling, to continue planting those seeds. And so I'm going to gain that permission to do that and to convince them that I'm going to do that and then follow through on it.
Bob, one of the things that comes to mind is recently I was listening to a marketing podcast, and they were really stressing that, no matter what business you're in, no matter what product or service that you sell, that we have to move away from just selling the product or service. What we need to sell is the lifestyle. We need to sell how your product or service improves and enhances people's lives. And I think that, that ties in with what you're saying, from the clinic standpoint, is we have to, through the questions and through the report of findings, all of that, we have to, make sure that the patient understands that this is how the care or the services that we're providing to you, this is how it's going to benefit you as a patient, and finding out what it is that they want to, what benefit do they want to get out of it, and how we tie those together.
Excellent, Jeff. And it reminds me that, if we're selling refrigerators, let's say, for example, we're refrigerator salespeople, we want to make the tangible refrigerator intangible. In other words, the cool, the freezing benefits, et cetera, of the refrigerator. We're not going to sell the physical structure of the refrigerator. We're going to sell the benefits of it. And so if we're selling a service, we're going to try to do everything in our power to make that tangible. So hear this. So if we're selling an idea or a service, we're going to make that as tangible as possible, as hard as possible. And so if we're selling a tangible, we're going to make that intangible. Isn't that interesting? So if we sell an intangible, we make it tangible. It's amazing how we have to think through that process. And I want to constantly look for ways to help them buy into my ideas. And then you got to take into consideration learning styles, and there's so much more. And we're just getting started. So.
All right. Anybody have any questions or comments for Bob before we wrap it up here?
Yeah, I want to really thank you, Bob. I really appreciate you pointing out that patients after the third or fourth visit are starting to have reservations, maybe on some of our recommendations. It just makes me more aware of it, that I need to dial up my game and be a little bit more aware of my patients' needs. The other thing is, selling the lifestyle. It's something that I've been working on, and I think that's something that I will be focusing on more in the future. So I wanted to thank you for bringing those up.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your involvement with this. Well, anytime, if anybody wants to role play, just pick up the phone and call me. If you want to just bounce some ideas off, I'm just a phone call away, and I'm eager to help anybody on the call today at any time, in any way, implementing this into your practice. I'm just a phone call away. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome, Bob. Have a good day, everybody.
You too. Hear me.